To Immersed. Immersed is a series around music, health, wellness, and technology. Each episode, we bring together a diverse array of perspectives, from artists and musicians, to scientists and academia, to forward-thinking technologists, all together to explore how music and sound can improve our lives. This episode, Sound is Medicine, we will take a look at how modern-day practitioners and artists are using their chosen crafts to improve their lives and those of their communities through the medicine of sound. Immersed is brought to you by StudioFeed. Enjoy the show.
Well, welcome everyone to Immersed Digital number 6, Sound is Medicine. We are super excited to have this esteemed group of artists and practitioners joining us today in a discussion that focuses on how they are using their practices both in art, science, and technology to further the idea and understanding that sound and music can be a North Star in health and wellness for us individually and collectively as a community. Stick around for sure. We're going to have a chat with the wonderful artist SHIVARASA and also an AV performance following this initial conversation. We'll keep things as organic as possible, and I'm sure everyone will leave as enlightened as possible. So let's kick it off with Matias. Matias, you are in Ibiza, correct?
I am, John.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe just talk a little bit your sort of your journey and sort of how you got to where you are now with the Sound is Medicine?
Good. It's a tough question to keep it very short. So,
of course,
and definitely being brief is not one of my virtues. So if I keep going, just put up your hand. Basically, I'm a professional musician. I've been in the scene for over 20 years now. I was born in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. I came to Spain in 2003, spent 10 years in Barcelona, and I have been for 7 years here in Ibiza now. My journey, to try to make it very short, I come from a family of medical doctors and very highly intellectual people. So besides studying the conservatory, classical music, then a professional music degree in Berkeley, in Buenos Aires, I also did 3 years of philosophy in the university. And I have always been into Oriental philosophy and martial arts. And somehow all that 4 or 5 years ago kind of blended in when we started Metrica Recording Studio here in Ibiza, a studio that was, it is actually, still is, built around a very cutting edge technology for creating immersive sound. Actually, there's a number of different names attributed to it. It's basically 3D sound. We have an installation of 26.3 speakers there in the studio, and an incredible technology to produce fifth order ambisonics, which allows us for a complete immersion of sound and gives us the possibility of independently moving 64 different objects on a complete space. That triggered our idea. Of course, this technology was originally invented for entertainment. There was never, on the approach of the technology developers, an approach towards medicine. But I started taking a master's degree in music therapy, and I guess that my interests from my parents in how the brain works and all of that triggered the idea that we could use this to try and create a different kind of entrainment. I spent almost 3 years researching on almost everything that there is. It's of course impossible to research it all, but most of the researches and studies that were done around entrainment technology, and you guys know all about it because there's a lot on Vibroacoustics, but with sound and technically, and you wanted me to talk about it maybe later, the binaural beats and all this kind of stuff, when set to trial into labs, it has never been a conclusive point about it. So we came up with the idea of trying to appeal to a different side of the brain interpretation of sound that does not stand so much for frequency, but from location of sound. Our brain is incredibly capable of telling where a sound source comes from. And basically we started researching about the possibility of using a very audible sound that basically spins around your head at a constant velocity, let's say 4 cycles per second, basically getting a very positive and quick entrainment effect.
And if you don't mind, just digging into the entrainment side of it for people, and sort of connecting that to your conscious listening focus. When you say entrainment, what does that mean to you?
Basically, what you're looking for is to alter the brainwave state of a person. Of course, when you say it like that, it sounds very magical, but it does happen. Actually, the whole concept that you're upholding of music as medicine. If you go back, and Liz is probably knows a lot more about this because it's one of the pillars of music therapy. Music has always been medicine. It's the modern ages that kind of lost track of that. I mean, as humans, we always used music to connect and to balance and rematch. And I was listening to Kaitlyn, for example, when she was doing her presentation, and much of what she was saying is definitely included in the conscious listening method too, right? The idea of actually being able to be aware of the way that we listen to the world, and being aware that there is a constant interaction between reality and what you make of reality. And that there isn't just a static thing that gives you an input and you're a receiver, you're in constant interaction with it. So that's basically the whole idea behind the conscious listening method. The thing with entrainment is that it helps us get through to some people that have probably a lot more trouble letting go, And when we started looking into entrainment, we started working with patients who have, for example, a very hard time sleeping, like Huntington disease patients or Parkinson disease patients, who, because of the deterioration of the disease, and especially because of the medicaments and drugs that they give them, their sleep is very altered. So for people who don't know what it means, when you want to entrain a person, basically when you go to sleep, your brainwave activity changes. Of course, in the era of information, there's a lot of information on the internet, and a lot of it's not 100% accurate to be to be good about it. And but the thing is that there is not just one brainwave. People normally understand is that when you change your brainwave activity, for example, from beta, which is the arousal state, when you're awake, and you want to go into alpha, theta, and delta, which are the ones that are associated with sleep, it's not that you're getting one wave. I mean, your brain activity is measured at least to get a decent measurement with at least 19 electrodes. That means that you're going to get at least 19 different waves. So when you change the person's brain activity, it means that you're having a predominance in those 19 measurements of a wave in particular. Okay. Wonderful. So basically, when you want to sleep, what you want to do is get that arousal level down.
Yeah, and we'll make sure. Yeah, go ahead.
No. I'll just finish that. I'll be brief, so it gives the possibility. Basically, what you do is through sound, in this case with binaural wave entrainment, through movement, or you can do it also with vibroacoustics, for example. That has been done a lot. Basically, what you do is you get people to change that frequency. That is a kind of saying that people are using a lot now, and it's true, and it definitely works. We're working very hard on having decent researches done. We were about to conduct a massive research with 3 universities around the world when the pandemic started, and of course that has been put on hold until further notice.
That's fascinating. Hold that thought, and let's dig into that shortly. I'd love for everyone to hear about that project. Liz, thanks for joining us. You're in the UK.
That's correct? Right. Yes, I'm on the south coast near Chichester.
Wow. Can you give everyone a little bit of an introduction, if you don't mind, and maybe even if you want to riff off of some of Matias's thoughts around entrainment, feel free.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Liz, and I've been very interested in holistic health for over 30 years. I first came across sound when I was also working in advertising. That was my day job.
Okay.
And I got very burnt out and really, really stressed. And I was practicing different types of holistic medicine at the same time, just as a kind of a hobby. And I was looking to dovetail that in to my everyday work. But I burnt out, and I began to use sound. I had a little Himalayan singing bowl, and I started to use that, and I began to use my voice, just kind of intuitively, really, no training or anything. But I noticed that after a few minutes of working with sound, how much more relaxed and how better I felt. And so that was a real wake-up time for me. And so I wanted to train to be a sound therapist. And so I rang one of the governing bodies for complementary medicine in the UK and said, hello, I want to become a sound therapist. And I could hear them. This was the old days. This was the early 90s.
Yeah.
And so I could hear them kind of flicking through a directory, sound therapy, and don't have anything like that here. So I said, okay, what do I do? They said, come back next year. We might have something. So I began, I couldn't go back to work. I was too sick. So I began working with sound myself. I travelled. When I got better, I travelled a bit and worked with a lot of First Nation people, worked in different, with traditional shamanic, if you like, methods. And I also then began to develop my own techniques, and went back to the governing body a year later and said, have you got a school for sound therapy yet? And they said no. So I said, well, I've got something which I'm kind of happy with. Would you be open to assessing me? And so they did. And so I became the first sound therapist in the UK to actually be recognised. Wow. But saying that is really weird, actually, even mentioning that, because I'm by no means the first sound therapist. Right. As Matias was saying, we're all our own kind of music therapists. We have this innate ability to some extent self-regulate through putting on our favorite music, etc. So I always feel, and of course thousands of years of shamanic history has gone before us, so I always feel a bit strange when I say that, but I wanted to be able to have something that was measurable, that I could get insurance for and work in a professional way. And that whole process took me to from 94 to 1999, when that governing body rang me and said, do you know what, we still haven't got a school for sound therapy. So that was when I started the British Academy of Sound Therapy. I then went back to university, and I years later got an MSc in applied music psychology. And that was a big turning point, because I became very interested in the science behind sound-induced altered states of consciousness. And so taking the shamanic, that kind of traditional shamanic approach, looking at it through a 21st century lens, to see, how can we actually improve health and well-being using sound and music in a consciously directed way, along with, and my approach also has very, very similar to other members on the panel tonight, has that reflective approach as well. There's an element where, how can we help ourselves to, because there's one level is the relaxation and the going into the altered state, but then, how can I help people to develop life-affirming strategies going forward, so they don't just come out of the state and then go back to life.
Very important. And maybe not for this conversation, but I'd love to talk to you about sort of how working with sound in the ad industry is sort of juxtaposed against sound in the health and wellness space. I'm sure we got some fun stuff to talk about in that world. But thanks for that, Liz. Excited to have this discussion with you, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Our pleasure. James,
Yes.
also in the UK, but a little further away from Liz.
A bit further up north from Liz, yeah.
How are you? Can you introduce yourself if you don't mind, and maybe give folks a bit of a background on your journey, and perhaps a little bit more about your vibroacoustic focus?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no problem. Hello everybody. I'm James. When I was about 20, I was in a rock band. I played the bass guitar. That was a fun few years. It ruined me for everything else after it, because if you're 20 years old and you get signed, this was in the days when you used to go to used to go on tours to America, and it was great. It was what can you do? 20 years old. But you also learn. You also kind of lose your innocence on those tours and stuff. It's kind of like, it's quite intense, basically. I got married after the band folded, and then I got divorced during a PhD, and I ended up kind of like at about 40, sort of being. I got a job in disability arts, but I was at that in-breath, out-breath point. I think I was at the end of the in-breath. And so I got a job in this disability arts and discovered meditation about the same time. And meditation just completely flipped me.
Right.
So basically, if this was, 15 years ago, well, I wouldn't be here 15 years ago. I couldn't do this. I wasn't that sort of person. So anyway, meditation flipped me. Also, during this time when I was working with very disabled students, I was a music tutor. So I would go in, the first day I was like, I can't do this. This is too, it was a very sort of like, I was not prepared for the level of disability or the like, what the heck do I do here? It was the toughest gig ever.
Right.
That first morning. Anyway, during my time at that college, some guy asked me to take part in a kinesiology experiment in Morecambe. And so I did, of course. And he introduced me to this therapy called Vibroacoustics. And because I'd just done the PhD, I was he gave me a load of research papers. He said, read about it. It could help your students.
What was your PhD in, sorry to interrupt? What was your focus? Yeah.
Mine was a psychology
PhD
in implicit deception detection. So basically that feeling when somebody's like, come on. And then, classically, it's a coin toss. Wow. People don't perform any better than chance, but they know when they've been lied to.
Fascinating. Sorry to cut you off. Yep.
No, it's fine. So I read all these journal articles, and I was thinking, well, this is really good. This is low frequency sound, pulsed low frequency sound. It seems to relax people. It seems to have a well-being effect in the kids that they tried it with autism or high tension, sort of cerebral palsy. It relaxed people. So I trialed it at the college, and I wrote them a research proposal and said, let's do this for our students. Some of them are really in pain. Some of them, got terrible neurological challenges. Let's do this. Here's the costings. This is what it cost us. And they just totally ignored me. And they were like, okay. And I thought, well, they're the experts, right? They do this. They must know. And then I went to a meditation retreat. And on the last night, some guy turned to me at the table. And I don't think I'd spoken to him before. And he said, this is a bit of a long shot, but would you like a vibroacoustic bed? Because I've got one. And then I sort of like went. And then it's kind of become a mission. But I'm very detached from it. I don't think I'm like Liz, or I'm not doing it like an artist either. I'm doing it because it would be nice if somebody would just serve as a conduit to get low frequency sound into the NHS. So that is what we're doing now in partnership with SUBPAC.
Okay, that's fascinating. And I think, as we keep the conversation going, one theme I'd like to touch on is how do we port all of this great work that's being done into the front of policy in our healthcare systems, in our community events. I mean, there's a ton of barriers there, and would love to dig in a bit on that stuff. But thanks for that, James. Really appreciate it. Now, back over to the U.S., Kaitlyn, you're up in Washington State. Kaitlyn Aurelia Smith, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Yeah, I'm in Washington, and I imagine you want me to do an introduction.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind telling us a little bit about yourself and kind of your journey. I mean, it's super fascinating in a number of ways, but I think it'd be best coming from me if that's all right.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm Kaitlyn Aurelia Smith, and I am a synthesist, a composer, and a producer. And I originally started with sound engineering and composing for orchestral instruments. And I left university and didn't have an orchestra to compose for. So I actually decided to give up on music and pursue farming. And then the next week after I kind of made that proclamation of I give up music, then modular synthesizers just wandered into my life. My neighbor had some Buchla synthesizers, and he lent them to me. And they just opened my heart and my mind to a whole new way of making music, because prior to that, I had such a assertive approach to making music. I think, the classical training of I have a piece I want to write, and I write it. And the synthesizer really taught me to listen and just connect with electricity and collaborate with electricity and listen to, what sounds are making up one sound, and just discover the multitude of sounds that make up one sound, and just keep going in that direction. And so, yeah, that's kind of been my journey with discovering or rediscovering composition, is just a collaboration with electricity. And it looks like
wonderful. Yeah, I mean, and I know you had a recent release, the Mosaic of Transformation. I mean, if you could maybe touch on that a little bit, and sort of how you pulled in this idea of health and wellness in music sort of into that album for people, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, it was kind of a side intention. It was that album was created as like an ode to my love of electricity, and the creation of that album was during a time that I was going through a lot of health issues, and I began looking into how am I hearing sound? Because during the health issues, I actually lost my hearing, and I lost my hearing for about 2 months, and I went to so many different doctors, and none of them knew what was going on, and they couldn't figure it out. And I during that time, I could hear maybe like 5% out of one ear, but for the most part, people had to like write me messages, and I had really intense tones going in my head. And finally I just gave into the tones, and I was like, I'm just going to listen to the tones. and I started to just meditate on the tones, and each one had information, kind of like a radio frequency carries information. And I started to just go through every single tone and receive the information. And it was almost like alerts from my nervous system, and my hearing finally came back from that. Like, it was a slow process, but that began this huge health journey for myself of just wanting to heal my body through the making of an album, and kind of use frequencies to just explain my healing journey. And so that album is mostly an ode to electricity and like the sonic version of my own healing.
Wow. And I know it inspired a lot of people. So congratulations on that. And even hearing your journey and your hearing loss. I can't imagine how profound that shift was, but very glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that, Kaitlyn.
Yeah.
SHIVARASA, thanks for your patience. Oh, I think you're on mute. Thanks for your patience. How are you doing? Great to see you again. Can you maybe just reintroduce yourself or introduce yourself to our audience, and maybe give a little bit of your background? Again, it's super fascinating.
Absolutely. I mean, thanks for having me, Kaitlyn. I'm a huge fan of your work, and I so resonate with your journey, and mine has been similar. So, actually, Liz and James, I was born in the UK, was raised in Florida, and went to university out here in LA, and I've been out here ever since for 17 years. I studied music industry, which was a combination of music theory and music business. I always knew I wanted to do something in music. I just wanted to play with sound since I was a little kid. I didn't know what that was about. And I played the piano, started making beats in GarageBand. And then once I got into music school, I started DJing right away. And that really took off really quickly. And the music production went a bit on the back burner for a long time. After I graduated, I was diagnosed with 2 autoimmune conditions in the same month. And it was like right at the height of my DJ career, sort of taking off in the beginning. I had residencies all over the Sunset Strip, and everything was going great. And then here comes these 2 autoimmune conditions, and I was in the hospital, and I almost died. And the doctors were like, "We don't know what's going on with you." And I had to go home. I just had to put everything on pause, and ended up coming back to LA and continuing with DJing, but was on this, was sick, was physically sick and unable to really continue in the way that I wanted to with my music. And it led me down a very deep awakening and spiritual path. I discovered meditation. I discovered Kundalini yoga. I started to dive into the law of vibration and the law of attraction and spirituality. And I started to just wake up to the fact that everything that was going on in my life was connected, this mind-body connection. And through that, I started to wake up to this realization that I had a lot of resistance in my body. And it actually was around my creative process. I had been DJing, but I wasn't making the music that I so badly wanted to make all these years. And there was just a lot of creative blocks. So I was like, okay, let me just start off by making some ambient music, because that just seems like the path of least resistance, right? You just play a chord for 10 minutes and play some sprinkles on top of it, and you've got a track, right? So I started doing that for myself, and I started to get really into it and started to explore binaural brain waves and theta waves. And then I started to, I was like, well, it'd be really cool if I said some mantras over this that I feel like I need. And then I played it for myself at night while I slept. That would be really cool. Meanwhile, I had no idea, this is a form of self-hypnosis. I just was intuitively following my gut and exploring this space for myself. Meanwhile, while DJing clubs, and this is just a completely personal process happening internally. And as I started to do all that, my body actually started to heal itself. And it was a combination of me showing up, making the music and having this creative release, and then actually using the music on myself. And then from there, it opened the floodgates for my creativity and to actually make the beats and the tracks that I wanted to make. And so yeah, that was the beginning of me diving into the space where just connecting my music with wellness. And I didn't share that for years. That was a personal thing until just a few years ago. I came out, shared my story, and started to share the ambient music I've been making. And it's now it's just very apparent that that's part of my purpose here with my music, is to not only continue healing myself, because it is a journey. I'm not healed, right? It's a journey, and it's a daily practice. And so really tapping into the joy of that creative process, now sharing it with others as I've begun mentoring, and just continuing to explore making tracks that is a fusion of what I've done in the clubs and the festivals with ambient music.
You're inspiring a lot of people, SHIVARASA, in your journey, and I just wanted to reinforce that. And everyone stay tuned for a one-on-one interview or discussion with SHIVARASA, and also a live AV performance, which is going to be super exciting. So I think, thanks for that, SHIVARASA. Look, guys, I mean, I think we talked about this before this conversation, just as we were kicking around a few ideas, but time's going to go by fairly quickly in this conversation, and I wanted to sort of zero in on one thing in particular. Each of you guys are coming at this, broader sound as medicine conversation with your own mission and your own journeys, but very much a very similar goal in the end. I'm curious to hear from you all sort of what you guys are seeing as the biggest barriers, let's say, to a more widely adopted understanding of music and sound as sort of the next frontier for health and wellness. And there's obviously a lot of, let's say, industry or traditional, systems in place that are preventing these types of things from becoming more mainstream. But I'm curious to hear from you guys, and feel free. Maybe we can go to Liz. What are some things that you're seeing as sort of barriers to making the type of work that you all are doing more consistent in policy and education and community?
Well, I think that one of the things we definitely need more of is research, for sure. And as Matias was saying earlier, there's quite a bit of pseudoscience out there, on the internet when you Google it, sound therapy, and so I think that really now more than ever we need to do the research to then put in front of the decision makers and policy makers that need the data, because in my journey has been 75% education, because not in the early 90s, they just thought you were crazy if you how can you wave a bowl, play this bowl, and how am I going to feel better? You're mad, or you're a witch. Type thing. And so it's like kind of grounding that and saying, well, actually, there is science. The technology is there now to look inside the brain deeper than we were able to before, and that technology it's more accessible. So I think that's really important. Collaborations, also I think promoting best practice as well is really important. I'm one of the hats I wear is as co-founder of the International Therapeutic Sound Association, and we've worked really hard to try and actually set a set of standards. And it doesn't mean it's kind of, we don't see it as being restrictive, but it's more about, okay, this works, let's put our flag in the sand and stand by the fact that we know it works, and we're wanting to then communicate that. So I think it's grounding, education, and best practice and research.
Well said. And I think you're quite right. There's a ton of new consumer grade technology that's out there, sensor driven, that can really understand our biometrics, and from a scientific standpoint sort of really track what's happening and why. So it's certainly an exciting time. Kaitlyn, on your end, similar discussion, and we can open it up. What are the kinds of sort of barriers you're seeing, whether they're, more indirect, like just people's attitudes towards this, or more direct, like certain things in education or policy or community?
Yeah, I think something I see often, especially when I have been doing coaching sessions with people, is just kind of a common feeling of I don't know how my creativity works, and I'm kind of at the whim of like, maybe it'll show up today, maybe it won't. And I think just encouraging people to understand their creativity, because I feel like creativity is a view into how you yourself heal, because we're all so different. And And I think understanding your own creativity is also understanding how your being works and how your individual way of healing works. And so I think just encouraging more space and time and attention on people developing their creativity and understanding it.
No, I think maybe Shiva, I'll ask you the same question. I'm really fascinated by sort of this intersection between, let's say, the approaching this concept as a creator. I'm not going to say versus, but like in addition to a practitioner, and how those sort of worlds overlap. Are there many barriers that you're seeing, in and around what you're doing?
Yeah, I think similar to what Kaitlyn is touching on, like the barrier being, like people's own mental barrier to the fact that, for me, coming from the DJ world,
mm-hmm.
I see healing taking place on the dance floor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I see healing taking place in the festivals and the clubs. And now how do we create a space where there's a more, those boundaries can sort of cross over. There's a lot of people that won't go to a sound healing event, but want to go dance in a club. And so how, with my work as a DJ, how do I combine these spaces and create an environment where people can have a spiritual experience on the dance floor? And maybe that is similar to what I've been doing with the ecstatic dance spaces, where it's a sober event. There's no talking on the dance floor. It's purely for you to have an internal experience. We start off with an intention, we end with a meditation, but in between we're dancing our asses off. And I just think, what is more healing than that, right? So to me, that's the holistic approach that I like to take, is the combination of the healing space with the dance space and bringing that together. So more of that, I think, more the integration.
That's fascinating. And Kaitlyn, I'd love for you to share a bit of your story around the venue, if we have time, that you're in the middle of reimagining. But James, over to you, if you don't mind. And I'm personally fascinated with your transition from bass player to vibroacoustics. What is it about those low frequencies? Is that something that was pretty intuitive for you?
Yeah, I don't know. No, actually, I wasn't supposed to be the bass player in that band. I was supposed to be the guitar player, and the singer's bigger brother said, no, I'll play guitar. And we'll get a bass player, but we tried some bass players. They were just so terrible that I just said, I'll play the bass. But yeah, that was a deep, that's a real blow to me when I was in the musician.
No.
But it was brilliant, because learning the bass is so much cooler. Isn't it? I mean, and now I can play both. But the low frequency element of the vibroacoustics, I mean, have you presumably tried vibroacoustics? Has everybody tried vibroacoustics? So yeah, you know what I'm talking about. It shifts parts of you. It makes your being sing the same song for a little while, and it seems to work afterwards. It's I don't know. I think I agree with everything that everybody said, by the way, and it's a beautiful thing that people have. I think musicians are differently wired. I think we're neurodiverse, and now we're becoming teachers, and so I don't know why the low frequencies are important, but everybody that knows about clubs and DJs knows about low frequencies. Am I right? It's
and it's fascinating how it seems like over time there's less and less of kind of a focus on low frequencies, whether it's kind of the cheapening of sound reproduction in the home. It went from like people aspire to have larger, let's say, systems for their home, to now these very small smart speakers with no low end, no grounding. But that's for another conversation. The barriers you're seeing, James, as far as the work that you're doing, it is very profound. It is very impactful. What are some of your thoughts on how you individually or the broader collective can get past some of them? Well,
if there's resistance out there to sound healing and sound therapy, that that begins with the practitioner, doesn't it? So for me to say that I'm detached, I've purposely detached myself from it in order to bust through the resistance of trying to do it as that defines me. So I've kind of twisted it around from, instead of saying that Vibroacoustics is me, I'm going to be Mr. Vibroacoustics in the UK. I just want it to come through and sort of have an objective look at it with this randomized controlled trial that we're trying to get. And if, as Liz said, if the research is there and they will see a change in people, we're going to use fibromyalgia as the patient group. At the moment, I'm not seeing resistance, because I think the resistance about the going forward with it went in me. I think more and more people are more and more accepting of this. And we wouldn't have been talking about this 10 years ago, would we?
Yeah, well said. Well said. Yeah. Matias, thanks for your patience. You know, given your travels and your history and pedigree, what are some things that you're seeing out there as far as, you know, barriers or boundaries to overcome to sort of spread what you're doing? And would love to hear a little bit more about the study that you guys were about to embark on and hopefully will be.
Yeah. I was listening to everyone. I had the amazing chance of being the last one to talk and being able to hear all of the experiences and all of the backgrounds. I will just highlight that it's definitely not a coincidence that 3 out of our panelists actually found their passion through overcoming their own illness. And it reminds me of the book, The Healing Power of Illness by Thorwald Detlefsen. It's a great book that everyone should read. And just trying to add, because as James said, I do agree with everyone's opinion on the barriers that we find, not digging in very much into the different businesses that do not like the possibility of losing a piece of the pie to this kind of new technologies. I would say that the most important thing that I've seen change, especially in this year, is people's awareness towards this kind of stuff and people's interest in this kind of things. This whole thing that we were talking in the beginning, the fact that music is in itself medicine. It has always been therapeutic. And not only on the dance floor, not only on listening to it, by actually becoming a part of the musical experience, which if you dig down into our past as humans, it was something that we always shared. One of the things that I've always found attractive about the fact of the dance floor, I'm a huge metal fan, so I can definitely transmit this vibrating, incredible feeling of a crowd listening to a metal act. And it's amazing. It's a different kind of energy, but it's all part of this communion, right? What heals us actually is being able to be together. And I do think that one of the biggest barriers is, of course, it's in the governments and the industries and whatever, but I think that the biggest barrier that we find is that a lot of people are looking to disconnect, and they use music to disconnect. And I feel that most of you guys, like I do, and that's basically the essence of the conscious listening method, is music should be done to connect, not to disconnect. And that's when the real healing power of music comes in. And it reminds me a lot of, I told you my parents are doctors. My father used to tell me that there are a lot of people coming to his consult, and they ask him to heal him, solve the problem, all right? And there's a big phrase by Hippocrates that he gets asked by one of his students if he can help heal one of his relatives. And Hippocrates says, yes, of course, but first I will have to ask him if he's willing to give up what's making him sick. All right, so why do I say this? The thing that we're doing by this kind of stuff, each one of you guys doing their own thing, is raising this awareness of the possibility that what we have to do, every single human being, is relate to music in a way that it's healing for them and helping them find that inner voice in the case of the musicians or composers that are looking for it. And in the case of people who are not professional musicians or composers to be able to seize the healing power that music has already. And of course, nowadays we can, even as Liz was saying, we can prove that, you know. But the most important thing is that people get involved in it. And one of the things that we try to uphold with the conscious listening method is listening shouldn't be passive. You need to be a part of that listening. And of course, as SHIVARASA was saying, when you go on a dance floor and you dance, then you're becoming part of the process. You're inside the music. And as you were saying, you're just listening to music on an MP3 at 128 kbps through this thing. And people spend thousands of euros to record a decent album, you know? It's very important that we can raise awareness on this side. And I think that's one of the most important things. And probably I said the thing of Hippocrates and the quote by my father, because we are expecting always governments or other people to do what we can do on ourselves, you know, with the internet, those kind of things that we're doing. I am thrilled to know you guys. I mean, I checked your backgrounds and stuff, and I was saying like, wow, I could have never dreamed of sharing a floor with people like you. And I think this is exactly what's going to be a game changer. Right.
Likewise. Well said, Matias. Appreciate that. Yeah. James, I'm going to put you on the spot for a second. We're getting a few questions from the audience around explaining vibroacoustics and a little bit more detail. We have some fascinated folks out there. Can you just sort of do like a Vibroacoustics 101 for those of us who would like to learn a little bit more?
Of course, yeah. Okay, so vibroacoustics goes from, so it's low frequency, so it's the left hand of the piano and lower, about 30 cycles per second, so 30 hertz, very, very low, rumbling rather than sort of hearing, up to about 120 hertz. So it's low bass. It's pulsed through a speaker that you sit on or lie on in a bed. It feels like you're lying on a giant cat purring. It's very, very nice. It's made with maths, so it's sine waves. It's not a performance. It never has a bad day. It doesn't, do you know what I mean? It just does its thing. You lie there, and somehow it kind of connects you to your body. So for people that have got ill health, they can kind of feel where it is, and it's not where they sometimes thought it was. You know, I've got a bad shoulder, and I've got a bad hip, you know, that kind of thing. People get very emotional. They release a lot of emotions after they go on the vibroacoustic. And so it's kind of magic on its own. You can sit there in front of the television doing your vibroacoustics, you'd probably get something out of it. But what really works is when you've got a witnessing presence to sort of like say, to sort of facilitate the person to ask their body what the problem is and ask the body again, how can we heal it? How can we do it? It sounds very, very hippie, but it's the complete opposite of a medical sort of model. It's asking the patient, it's the patient that's the teacher. The vibroacoustics kind of shows us where the problem might be, or I don't know, you can play different frequencies to people and they respond in a completely different way. It's very strange.
What is the rough frequency range that you work with? Usually
around 40. 40 is like the life frequency. It's where everybody starts off in vibroacoustics. 50, I think, is like solar plexus. It sort of goes in the chakra idea. 60, your heart. 68 up here, sort of atlas, and then upwards to about 120. But there's something that I'm trying to do is to see whether, you know, it's not 40 for John. John really wants 39.617 because it might just be that whole numbers are a bit like a bit kind of rough, you know. But basically, it's a very enjoyable for most people. For most people, they really like it. They feel refreshed. If you feel well and you have a vibroacoustic session, you sort of get up and go, oh yeah, that feels great. That's energy. You know? But for people that are in pain, I'm talking like chronic pain, knee pains, back pains, musculoskeletal stuff, they really feel the difference. It's really much more noticeable for those guys because they do say, well, that has really made a difference. That's really shifted something. And who knows what the future will be for any, because this is low frequency. I'm sure the same kind of thing happens at all sort of frequency bands, and in light, obviously, with the Alzheimer's thing. Have you heard of the Alzheimer's study? This 40 hertz sound and 40 hertz gamma sort of flashing lights, and it seems to do all sorts of strange stuff.
Yeah, and there's a ton of fascinating stuff out there, again, with just the accessibility to, you know, sensor driven, more consumer grade technology. I mean, most people sort of don't know that your body resonates at different frequencies, and it's fascinating seeing some of the multi-sensory work out there, and even on the creative side, and seeing what the outcomes are from an anecdotal, but also from a scientific perspective. Thanks for that, James. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Kaitlyn, we were having a bit of a chat before we kicked it off here around sort of the environment that you're in. It sounds very peaceful. I would love to, maybe if you don't mind, sharing a few things on sort of the importance of environment in your process, and, you know, if you wanted to share a little bit about that venue you were discussing.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of piggybacks on what James was just saying, just how we respond to different frequencies, and our environment has so many sympathetic and subtle frequencies that are going on all the time. And not that everyone needs to be in nature. That might not be the frequency that they respond to, but I moved back home where I grew up, and so I've always had a connection with nature, and I've always had a listening practice in nature. So that's where I kind of go back to my home base, like my internal resonating frequency. And right now I'm caretaking a chapel, and my husband and I are planning on kind of creating a listening garden where it has different sculptures that interact with the environment, like especially with the different weather patterns, with wind and with rain and with light as well, because the sun comes through the valley and hits the chapel at different points and hits the stained glass. And then I've also been talking with a woman who we would like to collaborate with about how to make sound sculptures for different constellations that are moving above the chapel. So that'll be a really fun long-term project to work on.
Right. I encourage as many people as possible to sort of riff off of how Kaitlyn's thinking about things and venues. My personal experience, other than being able to do an ecstatic dance session on Venice Beach with SHIVARASA, it's hard to find a venue that really focuses and, you know, takes care of, you know, music and sound. Sounds like you've got something fascinating going, Matias, in Ibiza. But, you know, most times it's sort of how to I mean, this is pre-pandemic, obviously, but sort of how to maximize drink sales, let's say. And, you know, it's not necessarily about having the right atmosphere for these types of experiences. So definitely let us know, Kaitlyn, when that's up and running, and we'll do our best to spread the word.
Yeah, I will. And we plan on it being a completely sober environment. So hopefully drinks won't even be involved.
Super cool. Liz, if you don't mind me asking you a little bit about that Marconi Union track that you did, or you helped create. I'm sure you get this question asked to you, but maybe you can tell the audience a little bit about that, because I think that was something that really helped push through into more of, let's say, the mainstream, this idea of, really a wellness focused composition.
Yeah, that track was a gift, actually, and an amazing inspiration that an advertising agency had that were working for a bubble bath brand called Radox, and they approached me and they said that this was just after austerity, so I think it was 2009, after the big crash. And so the brief was that people are strapped for cash, but they still want to have a spa experience in their home. So we're going to bring out this range of bubble baths, luxurious bubble baths. And what we'd really like to do is to have a piece of healing music to accompany people while they're soaking in the bubbles. And so they got me on board to collaborate with Marconi Union, and so I put the, as I call it, sonic vitamins into the piece. So my music is called consciously designed music, which is really not, there's a resonance with Matias' conscious listening as well, which is quite nice. So it's about if you like, sonic architecture. So how can we sculpt a piece of music to induce an altered state? And so I did that bit. Marconi Union did the music, their magic, and we put everything together. And we had a couple of different versions that I listened to. So we did a few tweaks, and the media got hold of it, and it went stratospheric, and it's still doing that today. Right. I don't know. It's had millions of streams. It's incredible. Like I say, it was a real gift because it really did bring the awareness of that into the mainstream. And thank God and Goddess for the PR agency that worked for Radox, because they did, they enable that to happen. So it was amazing. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, no, that was a big one, and I think in many ways it was part of the shift for how people are thinking about music now, and that's a fascinating anecdote. What are you guys all up to now? Sort of over the next few months. Just curious, any big things coming up for you? What are you guys focusing on? Maybe Liz, you can keep it going. We can start with you. What kinds of things should we look out for?
So obviously I'm still training at the British Academy of Sound Therapy, catching people up that couldn't come in. We're all in masks and everything, but that's amazing to be actually physically enveloped and immersed in sound, which is amazing. And I'm in the studio at the moment working on taking the consciously designed music further, the project further, and working on something called Life Sonics, cool. Which is going to be released shortly. So it's there's a range of different music medicine tracks with a hybrid. It's kind of a hybrid of sound therapy and music medicine.
Fascinating, and we'll make sure to send out all to our audience all of the projects that you guys are working on. As usual, there's not enough time to really dig into this stuff, but I know people have been inspired and are fascinated to keep the conversation going. Matias, what about you? What kinds of things are you up to over the next few months?
Well, John, we're basically going to focus a lot on the part of music as medicine too. Different venues here in Ibiza are really betting high on shifting the kind of tourism we had in Ibiza, really party hard and get busted, to a lot of more conscious kind of approach over general things. Of course, the venues, big venues, are still on hold and probably will not have a very expected season as they would like to. So everyone is trying to change that, and that opened a very big space for this kind of proposals. We are holding a number of retreats, working with different aspects, always with the conscious listening as one of the main characters. Two of the ones that are working very, very good is working with this shifting in the conscious of the divine feminine and how we're working towards that as human beings. And surprisingly enough, we're having a lot of people signing up for men's retreats towards how men deal with their divine masculine towards upholding this divine feminine. So that is going really well. It's something that we're very, very happy about. I am working very hard, and I think that, John, you probably heard about that. I can't disclose yet the number of a very large hotels company around the world who are probably going to dig deeply into this, onto their venues. Right. The conscious listening approach and the use of binaural entrainment waves on this kind of spa treatments and wellness. And of course, we keep digging. I was thinking of James because we work a lot with fibromyalgia too. And we have a large group back there in Argentina who are trying a lot of our things and having really interesting results. And before my time is up, I definitely, guys, will encourage you, each one of you, if you have any kind of proposal that you think that we could collaborate with you here in Ibiza. 3 of the venues that I work with, I could say that we're partners with them, and they would welcome any of your proposals to come here and keep raising this awareness. So I'm definitely open. I'm really thankful to meet you and make this acquaintance with all of you guys. And thank you, John, for the opportunity.
Wonderful, Matias. I'm sure many of us, all of us, would love to take you up on the offer to visit the beautiful island of Ibiza. Thanks for that. Really appreciate it.
I didn't mean just to visit. Collaborate.
Of course,
come here and do your stuff, which is exactly what we want to do.
Okay.
Of course, we'll make sure everyone's connected. Absolutely. Well said. SHIVARASA, on your side, I know you're doing a bunch of stuff. What should we be looking out for? And again, just to remind people, stay tuned, keep it rolling after this for a one-on-one discussion with SHIVARASA and an AV performance.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm working on a few projects right now. First and foremost, I continue to prioritize creating my music because that truly is my medicine. So I'm working on guided meditations, rhythmic breathwork tracks, beats. I have a meditation coming out this month, as well as DJing. So I'm playing these ecstatic dance events, which are these conscious dance experiences, twice a month, one in Venice Beach and then one in Santa Barbara once a month. And these are silent discos, the music going straight to your head, no talking, all ages, sober events, judgment-free zone, just a beautiful space for healing. So that's happening twice a month. And then in August, I will be out in Austin DJing an event with Deepak Chopra that's called Modern Nirvana. It's a biohacking event. The Bulletproof founder will be there.
Cool.
And then I've also just started coaching and mentorship for artists, DJs, producers. So that's happening in the next few months as well. And so, yeah, keeping really busy.
Amazing. Yeah, looking forward to it. Maybe you'll see me one day out there on Venice Beach. Super cool.
Yes.
James, how about you? What are you up to? And what should we be looking out for over the next few months?
Vibroacoustic. Well, vibroacoustically, what I'm thinking is I'm waiting on to see whether we've got through the next round of this funding. Because if this happens, it's getting to that stage where it will help all of us. It will help all of us. Sound and music and energy and electricity and cool things are going to be the future of medicine. I honestly believe that. And so for me, I'm kind of like working on with the fibromyalgia group sort of remotely because of the pandemic, etc. But using the SUBPACs, trying to get this remotely to work well, because you do kind of miss the person being with you. But I think a lot of it really depends on how this funding opportunity goes to, and is actually, Matias, yes, let's talk. I'd like to talk about, doing something. Everything that's been said tonight, I agree with. It's amazing. But I don't see you guys. You don't get to meet people. I've got 5 children. I'm looking after them all the time. I'm out on the bike with my son, So yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing.
Great. Well, hopefully this discussion will spark a bunch of cool collaborations. Kaitlyn, thanks for your patience. How about you? What do you have in store for the next, for the rest of this year, let's say?
Yeah. Well, right now I'm preparing for tour. I'm going to start touring in September, and that'll probably be pretty steady for the next few years because I have a new album coming out. And then I also started a label with a friend of mine, and we curate compilation albums. I give artists a prompt, and then we put it all together. And we have one coming out that is all about kinetic energy. And then I'm working on, last year I wrote a small pocket book about listening, and it comes with some listening exercises, and then I'm going to write the second one. It's in a series of 12. And so right now I'm writing the second one. Yeah. And actually, James, I have a SUBPAC that I love to go hiking and wear the SUBPAC. And it's funny because I get so immersed in my environment with it. And then people tell me that they just hear this like super bizarre sound as I'm walking by.
Mobile Vibroacoustics, I suppose.
Very good, isn't it? It's good. Yeah.
Well, there's some external noise from my environment right now. I'm not sure if you guys can hear the sirens, but hopefully it's not too bad. Maybe I'll just give it a second for it to subside. Well, look, guys, I mean, again, would have loved to have kept this conversation going for a lot longer. I know everyone that's tuning in is super inspired at what you guys are doing individually, and hopefully these kinds of discussions can move the ball forward. Just wanted to give a quick shout out to our partners: StudioFeed, SUBPAC, Alchemic Sonic Environment, SonarWorks, DubLab, Pearl, Feek Mix and Mastering, Music Motion, and Bushido Creatif. Again, thanks for joining us, everyone. Definitely stay tuned for the one-on-one discussion with SHIVARASA and performance as well. I think we're all, looking forward to a time where music and sound is really that North Star to like individual health and wellness, but also, community and collective well-being. And I know you guys are blazing some awesome trails. So thanks again for joining us. We'll make sure to link everyone up afterwards and push out all the awesome projects you guys are working on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Sarah, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Sarah?
I'm amazing. Yes, we have two Sarahs here.
Amazing.
Shall I guess maybe it's easier if I call you SHIVARASA. Would that be more suitable to this conversation, perhaps?
Totally.
Awesome. Awesome. Wow, that was a really good chat.
Great. John is great.
Yeah, he's so fun. He's so fun. And I know we barely scratched the surface of everyone that was involved, including yourself. And lucky me, I get a little chance to tune in with you before we have your performance that you're working on.
Yes.
And I know we've asked you here to sort of take us out of our minds, out of all that heady chat, and really bring us back into our bodies and have a chance for some of that information to kind of resonate and come to ground. Is that sort of what you're aiming for with this set coming up, or can you tell us a little bit about the vision there?
Yeah, absolutely. It's bridging the worlds of the wellness world, the sound healing world, and the club world, just creating a mini ecstatic experience where you can tune into yourself, but also your body, and release any energy, any stagnant energy you have. And I'm going to bring you back, land you back down nicely into a gentle soundscape. So it'll be a mini ecstatic dance experience.
Amazing. And I think, probably for a lot of people listening out there who have come up in the music or the rave scenes, I know for me personally was really resonating when you were speaking about the spiritual experience on the dance floor through music as sometimes one of the moment of entry, more or less. But to that point about the kind of environments that are there, and are they safe containers to hold that experience? And I know you're working a lot with that in the music that you're making through production and also with your live events as well, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. Just using the world. I came from DJing in the club, the festivals. And while I was going through that experience, I was working on healing myself. So, I'd be going to the clubs, drinking my kombucha, and driving back, listening to audiobooks on healing.
Yeah.
And that was my journey as a DJ for so many years. But not to say that you can't incorporate whatever substances that you are called to do. I'm open to however healing needs to take place for anyone. At the end of the day, it's what feels best for you.
Right.
What feels good to you, and there's no judgment on my end. The ecstatic dance events that I do are sober environments, and there is a lot of benefit to that, to be able to experience dance and music without the influence of any other substance other than your own body is so powerful.
Right.
So powerful. I mean, that is a high on its own. So to give that a chance is a transformative experience.
Yeah. And you know what, picking up on that, I think it's where this conversation of sound as medicine really gets interesting, because no matter what ways we're entering these communities and, what relationships we're having with whatever is going on, there is this place of connectivity, this place that no matter which door we enter, we're all there around, and that's sound and music. Let me clear my voice for that. And that's something that I've seen in your work as this sort of, this rock that holds, this thing that pulls us in. And I was particularly curious because I know you work a lot with bass in your meditation, which I think is really interesting, because when we think traditional meditation or guided breath work, a lot of times it's up here. And I'd love to hear a little bit more from you about that bass meditative experience that you provide, and even, the healing with low frequencies and the theta waves, and sort of how you're incorporating these things into your unique output, and journey that you take us on.
I think that, music transports us to different realms. And for me, it's always been really heavy bass music that has taken me to God, whatever it is that you believe in. It's what grounds me, and it's what takes me, and what transports me more than any other frequencies, these low end frequencies that just completely remove all other thoughts in my mind. And I'm just one with the music, with the vibration. And so for me, combining my background and my love for bass with my love for ambient music and healing music, to me, we talk about this holistic approach. To me, that's a holistic approach when it comes to fusing these two worlds. And it's just been extremely potent for me to experience and create. And I'm really excited to continue experimenting with how that develops on my end. And I'm exploring making bass breathwork tracks and incorporating different genres that I play in the club with breathwork. So it's a big experimentation right now, but I'm just using I'm creating what I want.
Yeah.
That's my foundation, is would I use this? And if it's something that I would use every day, then I'm like, okay, it's good to go.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, SHIVARASA, I think it's really important work to be able to put something in places that people can access wherever they're at. And, the entry points vary. So that accessibility piece of not just living on the top of the mountain and meditating, it's great on the top of the mountain and meditating, but, getting down to the ground where people are and the doors that they're walking in, I think it's super amazing. And you do it so well.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, I'm really passionate about building the bridge between the worlds, between my worlds of, club music and bass music and ambient and in the wellness space and sound healing. And I really do like just coming through the back door and surprising people where they're not expecting it. I think that's where a lot of healing can happen. I think that's where healing is needed the most.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
Amazing. And for those who haven't checked it out, SHIVARASA's Return to Sound album does exactly this in so many ways. And we'll make sure that we stick the link up here in the chat for you. I think we'll probably just wrap it up here so we can get to the experience. So thank you so much, SHIVARASA, for joining us. Any last words?
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sarah. So excited to be a part of this. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Welcome, friends. My name is SHIVARASA, and I will be your sonic guide for the next 20 minutes. And as we explore sound as medicine, I'd like to invite you to explore sound and music as an embodied practice through free form movement and dance with the intention of connecting with yourself. A lot of times we use music as a way to escape ourselves. But how can we use it to connect with ourselves? So for these next 20 minutes, can you allow yourself to just be moved by the vibrations, whatever that looks like for you today? It is unique to you and unique to this very moment. So can you just let yourself move without judging it, comparing it, just letting yourself flow? And if you've got a SUBPAC, right now would be an excellent time to put it on. Just go ahead and close your eyes and take a few deep breaths in. And just ground into your space. Feel your feet on the floor. And just take a moment to connect with your body right now. And we have the opportunity here for the next 20 minutes to really connect with our bodies and shake out anything we need to shake out, or stretch anything we need to stretch, move anything we need to move, release some stagnant energy. We have this opportunity right now to connect deeper with ourselves. If you'd like to set an intention for this next 20 minutes, I invite you to do that now. Is there something you want to call in? Is there something you want to release? Just take another deep breath in. Just leave everything else outside of the space for just these next short 20 minutes we have together. And let's enjoy this journey together.
Listen. ATM.
The mystery. No bunga pagi pending the lace, the mystery. No bunga to browse on flick, the mystery. No bunga me gonna next week, the mystery. I'm not chasing go, you and my code. You're not gay, don't mama la penny. I'm not chasing go, you and my code. You're not gay, don't mama la penny. Don't mama la, don't mama, don't mama la, don't mama. No bunga me gonna next week, no mystery.
Take a deep breath in. Breathe out. Take a deep breath in. Take another deep breath in. And just be still. Be still. And if you like, feel free to make your way down to the floor for Shavasana. And as you breathe, just begin to notice how your body feels. And if there's a spot on your body that you would like to send some love or a movement you would like to do to signify the end of this experience, feel free to do that now. You are your own shaman. You are your own healer. And if you've been moving with me for the past 20 minutes, I'd like you to ask yourself, what do you want to take from this movement experience into your life now? And if you return back to your intention that you set at the beginning of the dance, only you know that intention, and only you have the power to bring that forth into reality. You are the author of your own story. You are the artist of your own life. Thank you for moving with me for the past 20 minutes, for this short, very short, ecstatic dance, free form movement experience. My name is SHIVARASA from Return to Sound. I want to give a big thanks to Immersed and to SUBPAC and to you. Thank you. Bless.